Online rumor. The Prince of Beijing's elite circle, Luis, has finally grown tired of that deaf girl. At a press conference, he publicly announced his engagement to the heiress, Selena. I took off my hearing aid and looked at him from across the sea of people. Then, without hesitation, I turned and walked away. In full view of everyone, the always composed prince finally lost control, completely. Chapter 1. The 7th day after I broke up with Luis. News of his engagement filled the entire internet. Luis had spent millions to produce 2 million albums for Selena, who wasn't even a professional musician, sending shockwaves through the industry. 4 days. The story of the prince spending a fortune for love, just to win a smile from the beautiful heiress, spread everywhere. Soon, every major media outlet flooded with their perfect photos together. In everyone's eyes, they were the ideal couple, a match made in heaven. I picked up my phone. Our last conversation was still 2 days ago. I'm getting engaged to Selena. Emma, you're not the only one I could ever want. If you won't accept it, there are plenty of others who will. A sharp, spreading pain bloomed in my chest. I clutched at my heart just as a few laughing women entered, arm in arm. So the prince finally came to his senses. Honestly, I never understood why he dated a deaf girl instead of a woman like Selena. They were never a match. It was doomed from the start. Emma was just too naive. Naive? Please. She's manipulative, probably thought she could become the young madam of a rich family. Well, he dumped her. What a disgrace. Let's see how she plans to show her face again. Their laughter didn't stop when they saw me. It only grew louder. Like floodwater breaking through a dam. Chapter 2. In everyone's eyes, I didn't even deserve to have my name placed next to Luis's. He was the famous crown prince of Beijing's elite circles, while I was just a relatively unknown independent musician. We were born on completely unequal footing. Everyone thought Luis's interest in me was just a fleeting whim. He was used to delicacies. Every now and then, he might want something plain, but oddly enough, Luis treated me unusually well. He was the one who pursued me first. He knew I had a passion for music. On the very first day we got together, he boldly booked every large screen in the city to play my original songs in a loop and announced our relationship on Weibo. Under the glow of the neon lights, his clean and handsome features carried an arrogant pride that left no room for refusal. The next day, my name was trending. Because of Luis's name, a few of my songs that barely had 100 listeners received tens of thousands of comments overnight. Gossip spread like wildfire. People said I must have put a spell on Luis, but he seemed completely unfazed. Instead, he introduced me to all his friends. In a private lounge, I watched him fist bump with elegantly dressed men and women, laughing heartily. They were chatting about topics I didn't understand, about billion-yuan deals, sipping wines I couldn't afford in a lifetime. I didn't understand any of it. I just quietly held my cup of tea and sat to the side. A beautiful woman in high heels stood up, covering her mouth as she laughed. She walked to the side, perhaps by accident. The next second, a hand silently shoved me to the ground. The hearing aid hanging from my ear was knocked off by the sudden force, and my world plunged into complete silence. A strange, suffocating fear wrapped itself around me like a shroud. Pale-faced and stripped of all dignity, I began groping on the floor. Luis lowered his head and asked, "What's wrong?" His face flickered under the light of the lounge, his lips opening and closing until the shadows swallowed them again. At last, he realized something was off. Or rather, everyone in the room realized something was wrong with me. They pointed to their ears, directing their gestures at Luis. Just then, a beam of light brushed across one man's face, and I clearly read his lips. "Are you insane? You're dating a deaf girl?" In that moment, a flood of unspeakable shame and inferiority surged through me, devouring me whole. Chapter 3. That was the first time I truly realized how vast the distance between Luis and me was. Every minute and every second spent with him was filled with sharp, cutting remarks. "Are you really deaf? A deaf girl who writes songs? Please. They're probably Luis's work. Women should know their place, what belongs to them, and what doesn't. Without Luis. Emma, you're nothing." The voices of doubt swirled around me like a vortex, suffocating and unending. I began to think about breaking up. Maybe he sensed it before I could even speak. The always composed Luis suddenly had red eyes. Sitting in the back seat, he pulled me tightly into his arms, kissing my ear again and again, murmuring apologies. Emma, don't be mad, okay? Let's not break up. To me, you're not flawed. You're perfect. After that day, Luis never brought me to another one of his gatherings. Maybe he wanted to comfort me, or maybe he was just trying to atone for his guilt. But how could a young, love-struck girl resist such burning affection? Maybe it was youth. Maybe it was foolishness. I didn't care about our difference in status anymore. I naively believed that our love could overcome everything. Life even seemed to start going smoothly. Finally, through my own hard work, I received an invitation to a small but well-known music show. Excited, I wanted to tell Luis the good news, but instead, I overheard his conversation with his friends. Luis, you don't need to go this far with Emma just to spite your mom. Auntie's already furious enough. In the end, you'll still marry Selena. Don't get too deep into the act. Take it from your brother. Dump the deaf girl before it's too late. The room fell silent, so long that I thought maybe I'd imagined it all. Then I heard his voice through the crack of the door, calm and indifferent as ever. Emma's pretty obedient. It's just dating. It's not like I'm going to marry her. Chapter 4. Thinking about it now, Luis never longed for a lifelong love or a soulmate. What he really wanted was just a clever little bird, one that could entertain him and never make trouble. I stared at the expressionless face in the mirror. At some point, the spark I once had slowly drained from my body. Each day, I lived more like a walking corpse. I carefully added color to my lips. Just as I reached the doorway, a breathless stage assistant ran up to me, looking uneasy. Miss, I'm really sorry, but we might not be able to let you perform today. I froze. The young assistant, clearly uncomfortable about the last-minute change, lowered his voice and said carefully, Miss, there are some things that the show's staff simply can't control. You really don't need to offend someone that powerful. He seemed like he wanted to say more, but before he could, two figures walked in, arm in arm. The crowd that had been scattered moments ago suddenly swarmed forward like bees to honey. Following the noise, I turned to look. The man was tall and long-legged, his cold yet alluring eyes lifted lazily, and just that look was enough to take one's breath away. He didn't shy away from meeting my gaze. My eyes drifted from his frosty face down to the fair, delicate hand wrapped tightly around his arm. The woman beside him, graceful and charming, smiled sweetly as she pressed herself even closer to Luis's side. When she saw me, she deliberately tightened her grip on him right in front of me. And in that instant, everything finally connected. Luis knew better than anyone how much I loved this music show, how much it meant to me. He also knew it was my lifelong dream to have my music reach a real stage. To overcome my fear, I practiced day after day, pushing through countless rejections, filling trash bins and corners of my room with crumpled sheet music. I had woken up in the middle of the night so many times, all because I just wanted to do my best. And now, with just a few careless words from him, I had been effortlessly replaced. In that moment, across the sea of people, across the chasm that could never again be crossed. He walked toward me, step by step. His lips curved into a faint smile, but his words pierced through me like a blade of ice. I told you, Emma, he said, there's always someone else who wants what you don't. Luis, he really did know how to destroy me. There's nothing more brutal than crushing a person's dream. At that moment, all the pain I had been holding back for years finally broke free. Amidst a chorus of gasps, my hand struck Luis hard across the face. Once upon a time, I had treated this man like a treasure, like a beam of light brightening my world. But now, with my heart as cold as stone, I could only look at him calmly as he stared at me in disbelief. So you think that gives you the right to trample on someone else's effort? Luis, I said, my voice steady and hollow. You disgust me. Chapter 5. As I turned to leave, Selena's soft, concerned voice kept drilling into my ears. I could feel Luis's gaze locked onto my back like a hawk through the bustling crowd. When had the prince of the elite circle ever been treated this way by anyone? Every inch of skin on my back felt like it was burning. I quickened my pace, not daring to look back. By the time I reached the front door of the hall, it had already started raining without me noticing. The night sky had swallowed up the brightness of the day. My phone vibrated again. It was my father. His speech slurred from alcohol, mind fogged. Yet he still managed to bark at me with a harsh voice. "You deaf brat. Tell me, how the hell could the young master end up marrying someone else? You finally got your hands on a rich man, and you let him go? Tell me, what can you even do right? What can I do right?" In a haze, I stared blankly at the vast earth before me. Only by taking a deep breath could I barely hold back the tears threatening to fall. My father kept ranting on the other end of the phone. "Your mother ran off because of you. Luis doesn't want you anymore. And you're still a cripple. How did I end up with such a jinx for a daughter?" At those words, a bitter smile crept across my face. "Dad, if it hadn't been for the slap you gave me back then, do you really think I would have gone deaf?" I hung up the phone without hesitation. The calls kept coming, one after another. I didn't pick up again. I wiped my face with my forearm. No one could bear having the results of their hard work stripped away in an instant. But I was just too small, too powerless. The only thing I could do now was not to wallow in self-pity, but to start over. No doubt Luis would only target me more from now on. I couldn't let him keep affecting my mood every time. After a moment's thought, I contacted a studio that had reached out to me several times, though I had always declined. We barely spoke a few words before they said they were still willing to buy the copyright of several of my unreleased compositions at a high price. As long as I agreed, we could sign the contract immediately. I couldn't help feeling a little uneasy. Back then, it was exactly because they were so eager that I had turned them down again and again. After all, I wasn't some big-name musician. Why would a studio spend good money on the copyright of an unknown artist's work? But this time, when I asked, they replied with only 2 sentences. "Everyone deserves the chance to shine. And you, especially, you've always been a hidden gem." Somehow, those words felt strangely familiar. Chapter 6. We scheduled the contract signing for Saturday. The location, a private cafe. When I arrived, the spacious cafe was completely empty. The owner quietly made me a cup of my favorite Americano. I took a sip and pulled out my phone. The music program Selena replaced me on had aired last night. I guess Luis had pulled some strings to rush the episode out and ride the wave of online controversy. Selena took the opportunity to debut her new song, Bloom. As she sang it, her gaze was full of tender affection directed at Luis sitting in the audience. The director, sharp as ever, immediately cut to a close-up of Luis's exceptionally handsome face. At the end of the performance, timed perfectly with the final line of the song, she took the opportunity to openly confess to Luis, "You are a beam of light. Knowing you, I fear I can only exit the stage in silence." When the song ended, in a bid to boost viewership, the production team even used a shot of the two of them together as the official cover of the episode. The internet erupted. Within just half an hour of airing, hashtags related to Selena flooded the trending list. Hashtag Selena Genius. Hashtag Selena and Luis. Hashtag Selena Bloom. Only I sat there, pale-faced, upon hearing that song, because I wrote it 2 years ago. Every single lyric was infused with the unspeakable love I had for Luis. I was never good with words, so music was the only way I knew how to express myself. I had intended to give the song to Luis as a birthday gift, but he'd been busy with family matters back then. By the time we met again, a month had already passed. In the end, the song never made it into his hands. I had simply shoved it into the deepest corner of my drawer. Luis always said I was stubborn, unwilling to express love aloud. Later, I thought, if one day I could stand on a real stage with my music, I'd finally take out this song and give it to him, in front of everyone. So, Luis didn't just steal my song, he gave it to Selena. He used my love as kindling for their spotlight romance. At the end of the show, when the host asked Selena about the inspiration behind the song, she smiled shyly and stole a glance at Luis, who hadn't said a word. "Oh, come on, do you really have to ask something like that?" The guests burst into laughter, and the comment section exploded. Selena really poured her love for Luis into those lyrics. They re such a perfect couple. Ugh, I'm crying. Where did Selena come from? She's a lyrical genius. Look at this line, a smiling ripple in the lake of my heart, absolutely stunning. She's incredible. Now that I think about it, what even is Emma? All she does is market her hearing loss. Who knows if she's even really deaf? People with no talent love to use stuff like this to get attention. Cruel words chew you up and don't spit out the bones. I stared at the comments without blinking. In a daze, a slender hand suddenly snatched the phone from mine and slammed it face down on the table. I instinctively looked up. Unlike Luis's restrained handsomeness, the man before me radiated wild charisma. His sharp brows were slightly raised, eyes long and narrow, with a single dark mole under one eye. Reckless and captivating. It was Ethan, this year's breakout Best Actor. Seeing me looking at him, eyes red from frustration, his brows furrowed slightly in displeasure. It's been years, how did our little genius end up like this? Chapter 7. At his words, I was momentarily dazed. Ethan and I had known each other since our student days. We once promised to form a band of our own. Later, after my hearing accident, he went abroad due to family reasons. The next time I saw him again was through a distant television screen. When I still didn't say anything, he sighed and sat down across from me. You're even harder to reach than those famous directors. Nothing gets through to you. Trying to see you in person feels harder than reaching the stars. Actually, Ethan had tried to contact me using his real name. He wanted to collaborate on an MV. But at that time, I had just finished another heated argument with Luis. Back then, I was hitting wall after wall, until one of the girls I met at an audition introduced me to a film director. Both of us passed the soundtrack audition. Just when I was getting excited, the director blatantly placed his hand on my leg. He said the final decision would depend on our performance. The girl and I exchanged glances. My face turned pale as the director leaned in to kiss me. I screamed and pushed him off his chair. When I came back to my senses, my cheek was already stinging. I'd been slapped so hard I saw stars. The middle-aged man with a big belly glared at me viciously. A deaf girl, trying to sing and compose? You only have a decent face. I even wanted you should feel honored. He made out with the other girl right in front of me. Exhausted, I walked outside the hall. A tall figure was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, talking on the phone. As soon as he saw me, he hung up and rushed over. It was like he always knew exactly where to find me. He seemed like he wanted to take something out of his pocket for me. But when he saw the bruise at the corner of my mouth, Luis froze and withdrew his hand. His entire expression turned dark. Like a demon from hell. He didn't say a word. I tried to force a smile and tell Luis I was fine. But he didn't even look at me. He drove me home. Then he sat alone in the dark living room all night. When I woke the next morning, the floor was covered in shattered glass and cigarette butts. He gripped my wrist so tightly it hurt. His voice was hoarse and distant. Emma, I have power. Other than music. I can pave the way for anything you want. Please, promise me you'll give up on music. Luis's face remained calm as ever. But to my ears, his voice trembled. That time, we had a massive fight. He wanted me to give up the opportunities one had fought so hard for. To abandon the dream I had always pursued. Because in his eyes, none of it mattered. In desperation, I cried out, Luis, you don't understand me at all. I don't understand you? He sneered, stunned for a second, then laughed coldly. Emma, on your own? Do you really think you can make something of yourself? Do you even realize what you'll face? You're a flawed person. How do you expect to compete with the normal ones? If I hadn't installed tracking software on your phone, if I hadn't protected you, do you even know how many disgusting things you've encountered? Like what happened yesterday. You think too highly of yourself. He slammed the door and left, and I, because of those furious words, couldn't come back to myself for a long time. I wanted to tell him, the reason I worked so hard wasn't just because I loved music. It was also because of my selfish wish. I wanted to become someone worthy to stand beside you. I didn't want your name attached to everything I did. Looking back, maybe from that very moment, there was a rift between us that could never be repaired. After that, even though we made up, it was like we reached some strange agreement. Every audition and opportunity one received had to pass his approval, and he promised to no longer interfere with my music dreams. But once the balance is gone, how can the scale ever stay steady? Chapter 8. My expression grew serious. While I was still thinking, Ethan took the initiative to hand me the contract. Work with me, Emma. I can help you take that song back from Selena. I snapped out of my thoughts instantly. but I had never shown that song to anyone. I assumed Ethan was just joking. How do you know that song is mine? I opened the contract and asked casually. Ethan always spoke with a kind of careless charm. Online, people called him the most unconventional best actor in recent years. But he had always been like this since our school days. He and I were different. He never tried to change who he was. What he said most often was, "Flaws aren't always real flaws. I just live differently from how society expects me to." And now, that same unfiltered belief came straight from his mouth. Emma, you know, everyone who writes songs has their own little habits. Some like to add a beat during transitions. Others like to throw in a hook at the end. It's just like handwriting. I know you too well. That song's melody and lyrics carry all your usual trademarks. Emma, you're the most musically gifted person I've ever met. I don't want you to be held back by certain people. You once told me that your biggest dream was to bring your music to the stage. Well, I've fulfilled my dream. And you? I think it's time you fulfilled yours too. Chapter 9. Encouraged by Ethan. I dug out the backup file of Bloom from my computer, but the handwritten manuscript was still lost. Even so, Ethan simply said, "It's fine." He told me to pull out all the songs I had written in the past 2 years. Then he referred me to audition for a new music competition variety show called Today's Rising Star. I wanted to say something, but he cut me off. "I haven't said anything to the director. I just gave you a shot at an audition. Whether you pass or not is entirely up to you. Of course, I believe in your ability." When he spoke, Ethan's alluring eyes always stared straight at me. The unhidden confidence in his gaze gave me strength. I sincerely thanked him. While waiting for the audition results, I was so nervous my heart was in my throat. When I finally heard my name announced and saw it appear on the big screen, I couldn't stop myself from standing up. Walking out of the audition room, the air around me felt fresher than ever. I took a deep breath, only to run into someone head-on. Selena had just taken off her sunglasses. She sized me up and down, her lips twitching downward, too lazy even to fake a smile. "A no-name show like this, and you actually have to audition in person?" Luis just showed his face, and the director practically ran over and begged me to join on his knees. "I'm still deciding if I'll even say yes." I said nothing and looked at her calmly, my face showing no reaction whatsoever. Seeing she couldn't provoke me, Selena seemed a little deflated. She lifted her chin and pushed her sunglasses back onto the bridge of her nose. "Looks like I need to have a word with the director. Some people are way out of their league to be on the same show as me." This woman embodied arrogance to the extreme. But I wasn't angry. I didn't even want to be. After thinking for a second, I simply shook my head and said, "I don't want to be on the same show with a plagiarist either." Someone who has no real talent and relies on copying to cover up their incompetence lost all their competitiveness long ago. I'm not sure which nerve I hit, but Selena spun around almost instantly. She pointed at my nose and screamed, "Emma, don't you dare slander me. You're deaf, and you still say you write songs? Who the hell would believe that? Disabled people should know their place. Don't even dream of bringing your pathetic music to any stage in this lifetime. You're not worthy." I let her scream all she wanted. For the first time, I was glad I wore hearing aids. I calmly took them off, too lazy to argue with a woman clearly losing control, and walked away without looking back. Chapter 10. As I turned the corner, I realized someone was standing there. Ethan was leaning against the wall, nodding his head slightly with his headphones on, completely immersed in his own world. Noticing the shadow blocking his light, he slowly opened his closed eyes. Under the sunlight, his amber eyes locked tightly onto me. "You passed." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I nodded. He walked me outside. I looked at his broad back, standing before me like a mountain. We reached a brown-black Maserati. Ethan opened the passenger door with a faint smile on his lips. I didn't get in. I just watched as he connected the Bluetooth speaker, and soon a familiar soft melody floated out. The gentle humming, paired with a rippling guitar accompaniment, flowed quietly into my ears like a stream. It was the little love song I had sung back in senior year at the arts festival. Ethan had been my accompanist, and I had done the singing. The parking lot was silent. Only Ethan's voice was especially clear, just like his bold and straightforward personality. "Emma, I fell in love with your music at first sight." Music is an adjective. Chapter 11. Since Ethan confessed to me, we hadn't met again until Today's Rising Star officially began filming. That was also when I found out Ethan was one of the judges on the show. He had always called me a genius in music, but to me, it seemed like he was the one who deserved everyone's admiration. Back then, we were in similar circumstances, but while I sighed and lamented, he shone like the sun, warming everyone around him. No matter what Ethan studied, he excelled, acting, singing, everything. It seemed like there was nothing he couldn't do. His favorite sayings were, "Life is meant to be lived for yourself. If you want something badly enough, there's nothing you can't achieve." From afar, he nodded at me with a warm smile. I awkwardly turned my head away. Besides me, the show featured several other original singer-songwriters. Selena arrived last and immediately apologized in a soft, sweet voice. "Sorry, my boyfriend was being clingy, so I was delayed." Everyone gave her a knowing look. Her gaze deliberately fell on me. I had the distinct feeling she was planning something. I suspected the director hadn't eliminated me but instead arranged for me and Selena to appear together in order to stir up some buzz online. For the first episode, to spice things up, we were tasked with writing an improvised song themed around the person we love most, accompanied by guitar. Every word felt like it was referencing Selena's recent performance of Bloom, but judging by her expression, Bloom, which wasn't even her song, was probably the only one she could manage. The production team gave us only 20 minutes to prepare. Under pressure, a singer's professionalism really shows. I thought about it and decided to rework that little love song I had written in high school. Then I bowed my head and began tuning my guitar. When the 20 minutes were up, I saw Selena reluctantly put down her pen. During her performance, the judges' expressions slowly shifted from anticipation to confusion and disappointment. One judge offered a diplomatic comment. "Maybe songwriting requires that spark of inspiration." Compared to Selena's Bloom, this one falls a bit short. But since Selena had Luis backing her, no matter how terrible it was, no one dared speak the truth. Everyone still gave polite praise and let her advance. After all, the show's script had already decided Selena must win in the end. Once the show aired, people would just watch for drama. Few viewers could really grasp the depth of the music. The judges followed along with the praise. And naturally, the live comment feed followed suit, brainlessly cheering her on. Selena actually believed that praise, until the host repeatedly cued Ethan, who had remained silent the whole time. All eyes turned to him. Ethan's professional credibility was well established in both the music and acting industries. His comments were like an anchor, capable of shifting public opinion entirely. He simply raised his brows. The corners of his eyes lifted, and a small smirk appeared on his lips. What the hell was that supposed to be? In an instant, the buzzing studio fell into complete silence. Chapter 12. Selena's arrogant smile froze on her face. Ethan, however, acted as if he hadn't said anything at all. He simply propped his chin on his hand and kept his eyes fixed entirely in the direction where I was about to perform. The camera turned to me. The moment I began to sing, with my familiar melodic style and rhyming lyric patterns, the entire audience erupted. But halfway through my performance, I was abruptly stopped. The expressions of the judges changed. "Emma," one of them said, "improvisation doesn't mean copying someone else's work." The audience started whispering among themselves. "She plagiarized? Emma must be crazy. She actually plagiarized?" I knew it. How could a deaf woman possibly compete on a music show? Look, she's going to be eliminated in the first episode. Unbelievable. I actually had hope for her. You just can't trust that someone with a disability can write or sing music. I bet all her previous songs were plagiarized too. Selena hadn't expected me to ruin myself in public. Her face was full of gloating delight. That was when Ethan, who had remained silent until then, finally reacted. He pressed his lips together, turned his head slightly, and casually pulled out the sheet music for Bloom. "Songs are like children," he said calmly. "They first resonate only with the person who created them." "I'd like to ask contestant number 1, he added, glancing at Selena from the corner of his eye. "What was your original inspiration for creating Bloom? Can you explain the meaning behind each line of the lyrics? And what does the title itself represent?" Those 3 sudden soul-piercing questions left Selena completely speechless. After a long pause, she scowled and snapped, "Judge, what does this have to do with today's improvisation challenge? Besides, I already received my pass card." But Ethan turned his gaze toward me. How does it not have anything to do with it? Improvisation also relies on the creator's foundation and skill. An artist's style can vary, but every work inevitably carries the imprint of its author. And in your songs, he said to Selena coldly, I can hardly find any trace of you at all. In fact, even in today's so-called improvisation, all I see is a clumsy imitation of Bloom. Funny thing, though, he added with a chilling smirk, in Bloom, I actually see Emma's shadow. The moment he said that, I instantly understood what he meant. As his gaze met mine again, I smiled faintly, then began to explain aloud, in front of everyone, the story behind my so-called improvised song. By the end, I spoke bluntly. I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but the title Bloom doesn't really match the song's lyrics. That's because Bloom wasn't its original name, it was called Dream. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the director frantically signaling for the cameras to be shut off. I sneered and raised my voice. The lyrics don't express passionate love, they speak of the humility and longing that exist behind love. She longs to stand on the same level as the one she loves, to walk shoulder to shoulder into the future. When I finished, I looked straight at Selena, whose body was trembling uncontrollably, and couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. Selena, what's stolen will always be stolen. If you're so capable, why don't you steal my brain too? Otherwise, I can write hundreds more songs even better than Dream, and you won't ever write another one. Chapter 13. At this point, the show was urgently suspended. Variety shows can be edited, and Selena immediately demanded that the director delete that entire segment. She even warned everyone present not to breathe a word of it. But mouths belong to people. No one knows which brave souls secretly recorded the scene on their phone and uploaded it online. Soon, classic I was literally their type netizens emerged to confirm the authenticity of the incident. For people in the music industry, plagiarism is utterly shameful, enough to be permanently cast out from the circle. Public opinion shifted in an instant, and the tide fully turned in my favor. Adding fuel to the fire, the award-winning actor Ethan quickly posted on Weibo, condemning plagiarism and publicly taking my side. Selena was thus nailed to the pillar of shame. Her previous songs were also dug up and found to bear traces of plagiarism. A lesser-known singer even held up her ID card while crying and posted online, accusing Selena of stealing her song, turning it into a full album, and threatening to ruin her life if she ever spoke out. This ignited widespread fury. Netizens swarmed Selena's social media, furiously cursing her, submitting official reports to get her music taken down, and even doxed her license plate number. Some even camped outside and threw rotten eggs at her beloved car. As the scandal escalated, Selena became a public enemy, forced to disappear from the internet. I seized the momentum and released several of my never-before-seen songs and original sheet music. On Ethan's suggestion, I also recorded the original version of Dream. Unlike Selena's overly embellished, affected tone, my rendition started in a lower register, with a two-part climax, like a butterfly breaking free from its cocoon, telling a story of a love that never came to fruition, yet stubbornly refused to accept fate. This was the true essence the song was meant to express. Dream was finally revealed to the world in its true form. Some attentive listeners even discovered Luis's name hidden in the lyrics of Dream. Netizens flooded the comments. We were wrong. Honestly, Emma and Luis are more compatible. Emma must have loved Luis deeply. So deeply, she didn't even dare to say it aloud. Emma probably thought she wasn't worthy of Luis. This tragically doomed love story, it breaks my heart. Everyone saw the love I once had for Luis. I had poured my heart into carefully hiding his name in every corner of the lyrics. And yet, he shattered it with his own hands and handed it over to someone else. 2 days after the incident, Luis held a press conference. He publicly announced his engagement to Selena. He was clearly trying to use the announcement to suppress the growing negative press surrounding Selena. After all, due to the plagiarism scandal, Selena's family company's stock had plummeted in recent days. As her arranged fiancé, he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Selena also posted on Weibo, stating she would leave the entertainment industry to make amends, essentially a backhanded admission that she had plagiarized my song. Because of all this, my reputation took a dramatic turn. Offers poured in endlessly. Even the music show that had previously terminated my contract came crawling back, apologized, and admitted they had lost a true talent. They asked if I'd be willing to return for the second season and even write more songs for them. Chapter 14. 3 months later. I wore a blush pink mermaid gown and held onto Ethan's arm as I stepped onto the stage I was most proud of. This time, the name everyone remembered was finally Emma. I raised the Golden Melody Award trophy, my eyes brimming with tears. Applause echoed all around me. All the words I'd prepared for this moment vanished under the spotlight. Ethan stood quietly beside me, carefully adjusting the microphone for me. When he looked up at me, there was only tenderness in his eyes. No one would ever dare to speak ill of me again. After a brief pause, encouraged by Ethan's gaze, I finally summoned the courage to speak. This path has seen tears, laughter, pain, and deep emotion, but I've never once regretted it. Music is what I live for, there is no second option. I bowed deeply. When I looked up, I caught a restrained gaze. He was seated among the audience, eyes bloodshot, staring at me without moving. After the awards ceremony, Luis stopped me at the entrance of the banquet. He looked disheveled. There was a cut at the corner of his mouth. His usually well-groomed jawline now shadowed with stubble, and fatigue lingered in every line of his face. There were even faint bruises on his neck. I hadn't missed the news about him. They said he left Selena alone at their engagement ceremony, making both families a laughingstock. But I didn't care much. The once proud prince now stood before me, eyes rimmed red. He took a hesitant step forward and gently grasped my wrist. Luis's voice was hoarse. I spent 3 months finally realizing how much I love you. I didn't know that song was. He paused, then looked into my eyes with a stubborn kind of certainty. I've made it clear to my family, I won't marry Selena. I'll help her this once, and that's it. I'll work hard to convince them to accept you. Seeing I said nothing, a flash of panic crossed his eyes, though he tried to remain calm. Emma, let's get back together, okay? I stared at him blankly. Luis grew anxious. He patted his clothes awkwardly. Then his eyes lit up as he pulled out a silver ring from his pocket, trying to slip it onto my ring finger. Emma, I know you still love me. You've always wanted to marry me, haven't you? Let's get married. Let's get married right now. The words I once dreamed of hearing were now casually tossed out by him, and he still had no idea what I truly wanted. Luis, the world doesn't revolve around you. I forcefully flung his hand away. The ring flew from his fingers, hit the ground, rolled a few times, and finally landed off to the side. He stood there in stunned silence, staring blankly at the ring in the corner. I turned to leave, but Luis grabbed my arm again and pulled me back into his embrace. He held me tightly, muttering to himself beside my ear, Emma, Emma. I just don't get you sometimes. You're so soft yet so stubborn. I never know how to deal with you. You never accept any help from me, even when you're in trouble. You insist on figuring it out alone. You make me feel like you don't love me at all. It's like, you love your music more than me. He looked like he was about to move himself to tears. I used to think I could live without you, but I kept sinking deeper and deeper. I knew we'd eventually have to part. I had no say in who I married. I had to be with Selena for the alliance, but I just couldn't let you go. That's when I realized I loved you more than I ever imagined. But at that moment, staring at his self-pitying face, I found him utterly ridiculous. Luis, aren't you tired of acting? He froze. I took a step back, quietly pulling away from him and drawing a firm line between us. Luis, I don't love you anymore. Stop bothering me. He tried to step forward again. Out of the corner of my eye, a tall figure dashed over and punched Luis straight to the ground. Chapter 15. Ethan shielded me behind him, hiding away all his usual recklessness. His back rose and fell slightly from anxiety as he stood tall, glaring down at Luis, who was struggling on the ground but couldn't manage to get up. Fighting in public was never a good look. I reached out and poked Ethan lightly at the waist. His back tensed for a second, then relaxed. Let's go, I whispered. Ethan obediently turned around. We had only taken a few steps when a low shout came from behind us. Emma, if you don't love me anymore, then tell me, what about that song? You used to be so gentle and obedient. It's those damn songs that turned you into this. It sounded like he was desperate to find a version of the truth that belonged solely to him. I paused and turned slightly. Tonight's moon was full, and its fragmented glow spilled over Luis's head. For the first time, I saw something fragile in him. He was still staring at me stubbornly, as if just waiting for an answer. His face overlapped with the boy who once saved me at the alley years ago. This was the first time I had spoken to him this seriously since our breakup. Luis, you never planned to walk a lifetime with me. You also never knew how to respect me. I let out a mocking smile. Just like now, you never understood my passions or my emotions. This isn't love, it's possessiveness. The proud prince who always thought the world revolved around him, how could he possibly offer up a sincere heart so easily? Luis would never understand my feelings of inferiority, and frankly, he never cared to. Even now, what truly bothers him isn't losing me, it's not understanding how I could stop loving him, how I dared to stop loving him. And also, I wasn't obedient. I only seemed obedient because I was scared, because back then, I loved you deeply. But now, I just find you disgusting, I added. Utterly disgusting. I turned and walked forward. I wanted to give you this ring 3 years ago. Luis suddenly shouted. He picked the ring up from the ground and held it in his palm. His voice trembled as he continued. But back then, I wasn't sure. I didn't catch the rest. I didn't stop walking. Ethan caught up beside me. He naturally started chatting about the OST he was working on for his latest film. Oh, by the way, Ethan looked over. There's a football match at the Heikau Stadium coming up. Wanna go? I blinked. In Ethan's eyes, I was just a normal person. He never focused too much on my differences. Whatever he could do, I could do too. I nodded at him. He finally looked relieved, slowed his pace, and continued walking beside me, satisfied. Moonlight broke through the clouds. This time, I would walk forward on my path, without looking back. Epilogue. I poured all my energy into my career. In recent years, I swept every major award in the music industry. That, of course, stirred up jealousy. Overnight, thousands of comments popped up, claiming my fame was all thanks to the best actor, Ethan. The hate comments stirred public opinion. I came across one of them. It was Luis before. Now it's Ethan. Has Emma ever done anything on her own? It was immediately clapped back by someone with the username LZZ. When will I finally chase my dreams successfully? LZZ. When will I finally chase my dreams successfully? Are you blind? Emma's songs, don't tell me you've never had them on repeat. She got here with her own talent. World domination. Knew it. These women always leech off men. TSK TSK. LZZ. When will I finally chase my dreams successfully? Where did this man baby come from? Get lost. Useless trash can only yap online. Is Emma flopping today? Am I the only one who thinks Emma's songs are awful? LZZ. When will I finally chase my dreams successfully? Yes, just you. Every single hate comment about me was met with unwavering rebuttals from this person. I ended up reading those comments all night. The next morning, Ethan called me, saying he wanted to post a statement online to clarify things. I said casually, wouldn't that just prove their point even more? Ethan went silent. I ended up comforting him instead. Relax. I know you're worried about me, but I've already come up with a solution. He didn't hang up. After a while, he sighed and said, Emma, you've really changed a lot. My hand holding the phone paused briefly. Then I chuckled. That's because I have a lot more people around me encouraging me now. Negativity and encouragement, what they do to a person is worlds apart. I immediately picked up a pen and wrote a new song. No professional recording equipment, just my earphones, a guitar, and my voice, softly telling the story of a girl with a hearing disability who pursued her dream on her own and succeeded. That same day, the topic "Why can't women succeed on their own?" shot up to #1 on trending searches. User A. What? So us women can't succeed without men? If we've got talent, why shouldn't we show it off? User B. I support Emma even when she was with Luis. She never used their relationship to hype her music. She respects music more than anyone. You're just jealous she's successful. User C. This song almost made me cry. Is Emma telling her own story? Fans got nostalgic, and my old song Dream went viral again. Luis's name got dragged back into the spotlight, along with Selena's current tragic state. I heard that after Luis ditched her on their engagement day, she had a breakdown. She called in reporters and kept threatening suicide every few days, insisting she must marry Luis. After he publicly slapped her, She went quiet for a bit, but now she's back at it, threatening to jump off a building. Still, Luis refuses to give in. He even publicly declared that if they keep pushing him, he'll become a monk and no one can control him anymore. His dad almost beat him to death with a cane in front of reporters. Now Luis is still recovering in the hospital. The whole situation has become so absurd. I couldn't tell if it was real or some kind of dark comedy. I kept scrolling. That same commenter, LZZ, when will I finally chase my dream successfully, had posted a flurry of new comments. Luis already became a monk. Why are we still talking about him? I think Ethan and Emma are a much better match. Let the past go. Look at the present. The way Ethan looks at Emma is definitely not innocent. I glanced at the man lying lazily on the sofa with a smug little grin tugging at his lips and said casually, "You forgot to switch accounts." Ethan's face instantly froze. He sat bolt upright. "No way. I swear I switched it." He looked up and met my suspicious gaze, scratching his head. He quickly changed the subject. "Your dad hasn't been bothering you again, has he?" That piqued my interest. I let it slide and asked curiously, "What did you do to fix it?" "Ever since I got famous, my dad kept showing up asking for money. When I refused, he'd squat outside my company and act like a deadbeat. I called the cops countless times, but since it was a family issue, they couldn't do much." Ethan rubbed his nose, his charming peach blossom eyes narrowing with a sharp gleam. "Of course, I just had a good, honest conversation with him." I looked doubtful, but he smiled so innocently. No one knew that on the night my dad caused a scene, gentle Ethan had a cold glint in his eyes as he pressed a knife to my dad's throat. "I won't hesitate to kill a man for Emma." But thankfully, in the end, things turned out all right.